So Vivek Ramaswamy and Charlie Kirk spoke at my school. And you already know, I signed up for that event the second it came out. And so interestingly enough, I actually got to speak to Vivek and Charlie today. One on one, I had a conversation with them. Now, as a 19-year-old man with no real formal skill set or some Ivy League education, these are the most powerful people I've ever spoken to in my entire life. And I wanted to get them to sign my book, 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene, but I had a physics class and I ended up leaving. I didn't know how long it was going to take me. I didn't want to miss out on a whole class of stuff. So I ended up taking the L and not getting these signatures, which probably cost me $200. Sadly, I'm so disappointed. That's going to bug me. Oh well, it's fine. But today I got to speak to two of the most powerful people I'm probably going to have access to in my lifetime for a very long time. And there's a couple key takeaways I can take from this, and I want to share it with you guys. Number one, these men are incredibly intelligent. These men aren't just typical folk you see out on the street. These are probably some of the most articulate and concise men ever. The way they're able to form sentences out of a mixed, hardly coherent question from half these people was incredible. Even my own question, when I went up to these guys and I spoke to them, I don't have it recorded, but when I walked up to them and spoke to them, I was like, "Hey, gentlemen, it's an honor to meet you." I was so incredibly nervous. I was sitting there listening to the things they were saying to my questions, but I was like forgetting the questions I wanted to ask because I was so focused on listening to these guys. And their eye contact was like nothing I've ever experienced. And you can get a lot out of the eye contact of people. You can tell a lot from where people's eyes are and their focus on you. And with Vivek especially, Charlie less so, but with Vivek, when I was asking him a question, he looked so deep into my soul. And when I gazed into his eyes, I saw a killer. This isn't some nice guy. And this isn't to say Vivek's a bad guy. I think Vivek's great. But he's a killer. And that doesn't I don't mean he kills people and he's an evil, horrible guy, but he is ruthless. If you put him in a room of 1,000 people, and if one person were to get out alive for studying the best and being the best and being absolutely ruthless in their pursuit to being number one, Vivek would be there. And I could pick it up. And this is further backed by the fact that he went to Harvard for his undergrad, which is incredibly hard to do. His mom was a doctor, I think, and his dad was an engineer. So he had two very smart parents from the get-go. Two immigrant parents, but he was born in America. So wicked smart from the get-go. And then at the age of 28, he created a two something billion dollar company, almost right out of college, essentially, right after he got his law degree. And so that instance right there was me looking into the eyes of a man who is absolutely ruthless, who is unforgiving, who can conquer anything he touches and sees. And so one of my questions to him was, what advice you have for any young entrepreneurs out there? And Vivek essentially said this: a lot of people, what they do, they put a lot of work into small things. So an example is like starting a mom and pop restaurant. He says that's not necessarily where an entrepreneur should focus. Vivek essentially said, go big or go home. And if you have that focus, if you have that drive, that unending motivator of just focus and drive and desire to conquer and to win inside your head, follow it. And another piece of advice I heard him give to someone else who asked a similar question, he said, the only one that can stop you is you. You're kind of the beginning and the end of your own success. So it's really up to you. And, as a killer such as Vivek, you have to be able to say no. If someone's sitting there and talking your ear off for 3 hours, you need to say no. I'm busy. And so that's just a little takeaway I can bring from that. But what was also interesting about these guys is just, yeah, Vivek's a killer. And it shook me to my core in a very deep way, in a way I have never felt ever before in my life. It was really something else. And this is something that is true for other people who have spoken to ultra successful people as well. One of my friends, who might be watching, he knew Mr. Beast for a prolonged period of time, a couple weeks, very closely. And he says Mr. Beast just kind of has that energy. He has that vibe that he's powerful and he is ruthless, and he's a killer. And if it's you or him, he's going to win every time, no matter what, with no exceptions. And so this is kind of the vibe that those super rich people have. Those super successful people who end up going to Ivy Leagues for their undergrad, who end up going to Ivy Leagues for their postgrad. These people are killers. Stone cold. They don't care. They don't care what you're doing. All they care about is getting that perfect grade, that perfect result. They're just masters of words and charisma and holding their ground, and no one can mess with it. And then I'll offer some critiques of the event as well. This wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. The only people that were getting pushed to the front were people that actually hated these guys. So they had employees in the crowd saying, my timer's going off. They had employees in the crowd saying, hey, if you disagree, get to the front, right? Feel free to push through and get to the front. So they would ask you once you were at the front, hey, do you agree with them or do you disagree with them? Like, do you have a bone to pick or do you not? And so if you didn't, you were pushed to the side. You wouldn't have been able to speak to them at all. Because again, they're there to make content. They're there to make money. And by talking to young, educated people who know what they're talking about, they're not getting any publicity. So that was kind of a thing. They were throwing Trump hats out. I ended up getting one, which was pretty dope. Again, I didn't get a signature on it. I didn't get a signature in my book. I had my damn class. I guess I can use that as my motivator to become so damn good. Maybe they'll be asking me for autographs someday. Maybe Vivek will be hitting me up and be like, you're a killer, man. Let me get your autograph. But essentially, this whole experience of being able to talk to one of the youngest billionaires in the world and one of the most successful Americans, one of the most successful entrepreneur American success stories ever, from an extremely highly educated man who is a killer and beat all the competition and stood out and absolutely just honed in with those eyes of a hawk, right, on its prey of whatever task he's assigned to do. Being able to talk to that guy, and Charlie as well, but less so, my entire worldview has kind of changed. And so I want to share this with you guys who are watching. And so once you kind of this event allowed me to see someone who's way at the top, the highest strata of society, and we don't have access to people like this. Commoners don't see these people often. You see them on stage, right, as Taylor Swift, but that's it. But seeing the output you can get from input early on in your life and have that echo throughout the rest of your life and history even is so profound. It almost makes a mockery of people who aren't working 24/7, who aren't always doing better than they were before. It makes a mockery of me for not being in a book right now instead of, I don't know, making a video. But what's the greatest takeaway you guys can have from this video? From my experience speaking to an extremely rich and powerful and influential individual. Well, two of them, actually. So what can I take away and what can you guys take away from them? These people are killers. I can't say it enough. If it's you or them, they're going to win all the time, every time. They know what they're doing. They know how to navigate this planet. And they're confident. They're charismatic. They're quick. They're well educated on everything. So this is the real conclusion for you guys. You kind of need to be a killer, man. It's not kind of, you need to. If you want to reach such a high level of success anyway, I know all the kids who ended up in Ivy League schools, man, if it was you or them, you would lose every time. They're killers. And so kids that get into the best schools and they're doing the best things and they're doing way more than everyone else, they're killers in the sense that they're almost psychopathic. And allow me to elaborate. All the kids who got into really good schools, they didn't tell anyone what they were doing. If you asked them a question about something, they feigned this kind of cluelessness. They kind of projected out onto the world as if, they're just kind of going through it like everyone else. They know every single move. They're 20 steps ahead of you, man. And they're going to sit there and they'll lie to your face and they tell you, oh, I don't know. I don't really know what I want to do yet. I don't really know what colleges I want to apply to. I did a couple scholarships. They applied to every scholarship. They won every single one. They got into every school they wanted to get into. And they have been putting in way more hours than you. So you think the norm is just going home and relaxing after school? That might be the norm, but that's not going to give you that echo throughout eternity. So yeah, that's all for this video, guys. I got to meet Vivek Ramaswamy. I got to meet Charlie Kirk. Two very, very well-spoken individuals. Again, I don't agree with everything they say. I'm far from being a Charlie Kirk fan or a Vivek fan, but they do have incredible qualities that I think a lot of people can learn from. And they're very influential and they're very powerful. And it's just, it makes the hair stand on the back of your neck to know that they're just so many steps ahead of you. You are just living in their game. I was in the crowd. I'm playing their game, man. They're not playing my game. I'm playing their game. They're kind of the game master, I suppose. They're the master of this whole system. But anyway, guys, that's going to be all for this one. Successful people are ruthless. They'll lie. They'll do all this crazy shit. They'll be working 20 times harder than they tell you they're working. And then they make it seem effortless. And then they all of a sudden they become this godlike figure of godlike efficiency. It's like Elon Musk. Elon Musk just had enough money from a gig to hire really good talent. So all of a sudden he built up all these companies by being ruthless, not being forgiving to his employees, firing people who were bad, hiring people who were good, and all of a sudden people view Elon Musk as this guy who built up all these different companies. He's just kind of the guy who makes sure people are doing what they're doing because he's ruthless and he can fire people and he can make sure people are actually doing their job. That's what Elon Musk is good at. And then other than that, he's just an engineer. But Elon Musk is almost like a god amongst men in our society, kind of like how Notch was in like 2012 and 2014 or whenever that time was. He was the creator of Minecraft. Everyone played Minecraft. He was like a god. He created this world in which everyone, was living. He made a world that other people were living in. Just like how Vivek, gaming the system of universities and his education and building businesses and multiple companies and all this is, he's creating the world we live in. So who do you want to be? Do you want to be living in their world, or do you want to be the one who is creating the world in which we live? I guess think twice about, sitting around and taking a break. Maybe it can work a little harder. But this is the devil's advocate on my shoulder. Breaks are good, man. Don't burn yourself out. Sometimes people are just built better, and we kind of have to come to terms with this with ourselves. Yeah, I look up to people who are super duper successful, but maybe it's true that they have something I don't. I'm sitting there talking to these dudes, fucking shaking in my boots, and these guys are just eyeing me like a hawk as I ask a question, man. So much eye contact for them. I don't know. That's all for this one, guys. I hope this video was neat. I'm glad I had this experience. I think it was pretty cool. I'm glad I got to talk to these guys. And that'll be all for this video. Peace.